Welcome back to another Hearts of Iron 4 video. Today I'm going over 10 tips that everybody, new or old, can use in Hearts of Iron 4. Now, please pay very close attention because like a kamikaze pilot, I'm only going to do this once. Now, the first thing I'm going to show you guys is a little tip regarding your research. The majority of people know that you can save 30 days and then apply it to something that you want to go ahead and get 30 days off of. So if you have this extra research slot sitting here for a month, then you can apply it to something and get 30 days off, but that's the max it'll go to. One thing you can do here is go ahead and start researching some equipment. We'll just use the P40 and the P38. Now we're going to let our 30 days on these two research slots saved up, and we're going to apply them to our planes we're already researching. Now, really quick before we do get to the 30-day mark, I wanted to just really quick point this out. I prefer to let it go 31 days because if you do this early, you're going to end up wasting the research. It has to have saved at least the 30 days minimum, so it can be like this, but it will not actually work. So I prefer to wait until the 31-day mark. Now what we're going to do is we have 124 days on both of these planes. Remember that. So now we're going to swap over to something else. And engineering. Now instead of it being 124 days, we're going to use our research slots here that already have the 30 days saved. So instead of being 120, now they're 95. That's just a little quick research tip I want to show you guys. Now this only works once per research for some odd reason. You can't do it a second time or a third time, unfortunately, so this only works once with the technology you're already doing. So don't do it to something really far ahead of time or else you're only going to get like 6 days off. Only do it to stuff that you're already researching that is with the current date of the game. Now this is the number one thing I always recommend people to do in multiplayer and even single player if they're the United States or Russia sometimes. You know, countries that aren't going to be at war for a while. It's called one division training. Now, this really only works for the allies, and it's a really easy way to gain army experience from the very start of the game until you're ready to go to war. Pretty much what it is normally if you train your entire army, you only get right here 0.121 daily. Now what's going to end up happening is if we delete all but our largest division, which is right here, our National Guard division, instead of being at 1.21, it goes up to 0.130. Now, because you're training this one division, you're not really spending as much military equipment either. Now, for some people, this might not be enough of a boost, but the problem is the larger your army is, the less army experience you're going to get from training. So what you can do is over time, once you get army experience, say we're just going to add 500 here, what you can do is continuously train your division, but add the battalions to it over time. This is what a lot of US players do in multiplayer, so that way it saves them rifles, it saves them equipment, and over time, it takes about a year to get a single 40 width set up. But instead of 1.30, your division over time, it just takes a minute to actually reinforce, and then your army experience will start going up some. There it is, 1.45. It just takes it a while, and pretty much while it's actually getting maxed out, as you can see here with our strength, it's because we don't have enough rifles available yet. It's just going to go up. And it should actually, I think the most you can get once a division is entirely filled, it can give you 0.250 army experience or 1 army experience every single 4 days. So if you do that along with getting a military theorist, you're going to be getting around pretty much a single political power on average, I would say about every 3 days, or 1 army experience every 3 days. For next up, I'm going to show you guys how to actually swap your designers out so you can get the bonuses for all of them for whatever it is you need. Now, most people know if you need a light aircraft designer, this applies to fighters, carrier fighters, this one design, this one applies to heavy fighters and stuff, but you can actually swap these out and get some pretty cool results. So, for an example, if we're going to use it for our armor, which is probably going to be the best, easiest bet to explain it, as you can see, if we want a martyr, it works like this, but let's go ahead and get a bison. So as you can see here, our soft attack is 34. We want soft attack for that. So what we do is go into here and we will apply the Mon tank designer, and now our bison is going to have 35. So we're just going to go ahead and speed forward just a couple days, and now that we've gotten this done, what we can do is instead of over here, if we want a heavy self-propelled gun, because we don't want the extra soft attack, we want armor, now we can swap this guy out for a heavy tank designer, which will then apply the bonus to our heavy self-propelled gun, as you can see right there. Instead of 57 soft attack, now we're going to be at 55, and our armor went up. And we still have the bonus from the mod tank designer, which you can see by holding shift and left click. They now have the bonuses while they were researched with that specific designer. This actually works great for the US, something I usually do as the United States. For an example, for those USA players out there in multiplayer, what I will do is get Coastal Defense Naval Yard right here, or the Coastal Defense Fleet Designer for the Norfolk Naval Yard. And what I'll end up doing is I will use them to research the screen ships like destroyers and light cruisers, and then once those are done, I'll use 150 army or 150 political power to then swap to the Pacific Fleet Designer, giving capital ship bonuses, and I got a production cost reduction for my screens. It only a range penalty, which really doesn't matter that much in the Pacific and certain areas of the Atlantic. Next up is a tip for those people that like to go total mobilization, but they have huge problems with manpower. Now, 99% of the time, people see total mobilization like, oh, okay, that'll take 3% of my manpower away, I'm at 5 million, I'll be fine. What ends up happening when you go to that, it has to be lower than your conscription lot, or you're going to have 0 troops that are going to be able to resupply. Now, as you can see here, our recruitable population is 2.50%, but total mobilization is going to take 3% away. So what this is going to mean is we're going to lose, or actually be in debt to the game for 0.50 recruitable population. So we'd have to increase this over 3%, or else we're going to be at a 0 manpower, and we're going to have a huge shortage very soon. So what you can do is just either go to extensive conscription, which gives 5%, so you'll have 2% if you're on total mobilization. Or another option is once you're on total mobilization, you can do women in the workforce, which gives you 3%, which basically balances it out. So if you're going to go total mobilization, make sure either a couple things happen. One, your conscription lot is higher than 3%, or you are doing or have done women in the workforce. Now, this is literally the number one thing you should always get in Hearts of Iron 4, and it takes no supply, no equipment, nothing. It's always radio. Now, the majority of people think, oh, radio's not that big a deal. It's just increasing the reinforcement rate. Let's be honest, that just resupplies my divisions and leads to radar. Actually, that's not what reinforcement rate is, contrary to what a lot of people believe. What reinforcement rate is it affects the divisions that can actually join the battle if something is routed. So every hour the battle goes on, there's chances of these divisions being deorged and getting pushed out. Now, what'll happen is there's a chance, as you can see with radio, which is currently 5%, that every hour the battle goes on, if the combat width is available, one of these divisions will join the battle, and there's a chance of that because our 5% of radio. So that's about every hour you'll have a plus 5% chance that the battle goes on of reinforcements joining. Now, a lot of people will say that's still not a big deal, but this is where it's probably going to change your mind. If they're actually able to hold all these 10 divisions off, but your reinforcement rate is 0, none of these divisions are going to replace the ones that are routed. So that means that once the battle has started, the divisions that are attacking, nothing is going to replace them if they're deorged. And if you're being on the defensive side of this, if say Poland was attacking Germany and we had no reinforcement rate, if this one division was able to push back all these divisions somehow, even though we have 9 reserves, the entire group would retreat because there's no way the reserves can enter the battle because they don't have enough reinforcement rate. So the number one thing you can always get for increasing that is reinforcement rate, and it helps out a ton. Also, radio does actually help that out a little bit. Radio does actually increase the recovery rate a little bit, but for some reason when you do have radio, it will actually increase the reinforcement rate slightly. Another tip I have for you guys is most of the time you don't need as many garrison divisions as you think. Actually, the way resistance works is it will originate somewhere inside of a territory and then spread if it's not in check. Now, what you can do is look at the resistance map and you can see this is true. So if we look over here in Warsaw, you actually see this getting, well, daily resistance growth, but it'll be capped at 40% from suppression. Now, as you can see here, we're actually getting it from seed lice, and Warsaw is what's causing the increase to our resistance. Now, if you look in the next zone over, actually let's go down a little bit, here we go. We're getting one from Tarnow, which is the city in here, along with Krakow. Then we're getting it from Radice and Kleist, as in, or Radom, whatever. It's literally just increasing because of the cities themselves in the zone. But what will end up happening if they don't have a city? Actually, pretty much every zone does have a city. But sometimes if you do come across a zone without a city in it, for some reason, there won't be any resistance growth in that territory itself. It's kind of hard to find one. Nope. Okay. If you ever do come across one, though, it will spread from state to state if it's not in check fast enough. So if you don't have any resistance guarded whatsoever, it's going to increase rapidly, and then it's just going to start spreading out. Next is going to be one of the things that irritate me the most that I see multiplayer USA and Germany's do. If you go into here, even if you're not planning on researching it ever, if you're not planning on putting it into production at all, as long as you're making tank divisions, it's worth it. The motorized infantry, as you can see, have no hardness. Well, actually, they have 10% hardness on here, and that's it. Now, if we actually look at the division itself, let's look at this division. Our hardness from the motorized is actually 0. Now, what ends up happening is the hardness for the motorized, as long as you just research the first mechanized, it'll increase the hardness for all of your motorized divisions by 100%. So once you do have one, you'll actually increase the hardness of it, and it helps out a lot more than you would think. So just by upgrading this, even if you don't put it into production, it's still worth it to research if you have tank divisions to increase the hardness on your divisions with motorized in them. For my next tip, you don't always need CAS, but sometimes you just need enough fighters that will give you bonuses to attacking infantry and other kind of divisions on the other side. Now, you might be wondering what I'm talking about. Now, obviously, I'm not going to break through your consistent Maginot Line. I'm not even really trying this just for an example. If you have air superiority over a region by at least 70%, you will get bonuses applied to the enemy on the ground. Now, let me go and show you guys this. On the Maginot Line, as you can see, they do not have air superiority. It actually says the enemy has air superiority over the French. So if you look here, we're actually giving them a 19% penalty to them having no planes up in the air and us having air superiority. Now, sometimes it'll change. As you can see, it's up to 34%. And it always maxes out at 35% inside the game. Now, this can be changed entirely based on your land doctrine. Now, some things in land doctrine will actually give you bonuses, 2 air superiority bonuses. I know there's one under here. There it is right there. Air superiority, for example, will give a bonus of plus 20%. So you could actually have a plus 55% penalty to the enemy divisions on the ground if you have just fighters up. And that's without CAS or anything actually damaging the unit. So that's a really cool thing to always remember, that the air superiority bonus is just as damaging as CAS and can actually really be solely used instead of CAS under certain circumstances. For the next tip, you don't need to actually worry all the time about researches and all that kind of stuff and getting them mixed up. Research bonuses will only apply to the thing that you're about to research, never what you're already researching. An example of this is, as you can see, we're going under superior firepower, but we're going to get this guy, which is going to give a 100% bonus for land doctrine research. Now, to somebody, that might worry them and make them think, oh no, that's going to cut the days down to 60 on this, but I want to save it for this next one here, which would be 378 days, to cut that down by 100% or a half, and then this one by half. So basically, as you can see here, we're going to finish it up in 1 day. Doesn't actually apply. Now for the next one, it will apply along with the next one. Something new I'm doing is I'm going to be covering a couple extra smaller tips that aren't important enough to make it into a top 10 list pretty much, but instead are just going to be mentioned really quick. So first off, focuses cost 1 political power daily. So that means if you want to stock up political power, you can avoid doing focuses if you have nothing better to do. You can also go and see what someone is exporting or exporting by clicking trade, looking for something. Say for example, we know Sweden usually trades tungsten to Germany right at the beginning of the game, and I didn't stop it. So we could go to filter by tungsten, we could go down to Sweden, and we can see they're trading it to the German Reich. This one I know I'm going to catch a lot of flack for because a lot of multiplayer communities don't want this to get out, but sorry guys. Basically what you can do is, if you're at war with anybody, this works great for Italy and Japan, or really any other country that's going to go to war early with somebody or is at war. You can start mine laying certain regions, and what will end up happening is after your war has been finished, as long as the mines are still there, you will end up winning. So for example, we're going to tag Ethiopia here really quick. We're going to remove all of our divisions so we can just march into their capital. Tag Italy. Now we're going to start marching into their capital, or really close by actually, so we don't finish this too early. Alright, so now that we've been laying mines for a few days, we're going to go ahead and take out Ethiopia's capital so we can finish this. Now, as you can see, if you look right here, we've been mine laying for a little while. It shows right here that we have 70 mines. Wait, 77 mines, but if you click the region, we've only done 8% mining. So now, once the war with Ethiopia is going to be over, and we're going to finally be at peace. Alright, so now that we're just going to go ahead and annex them, whatever. Now, as you can see, the mines are going away slowly at a time, but the area is still technically mined. So if you mine it all the way up to 100%, maybe a few months before World War II actually fires off, Italy, if you're a multiplayer, could start theoretically laying mines in the very beginning of the game and just wait before they go to, finish the war with Ethiopia until they have enough of the Mediterranean mine to last for a couple years. For our next tip, heavy fighters are sometimes better than normal fighters under certain circumstances. Now, it works mostly like that in zones like Africa, certain areas in the Atlantic, and largely the Pacific for the United States and Japan. Now, this is why. Let's go ahead and compare the two, actually. If you remember, hold shift left click. As you can see, heavy fighters have a lot more range, for example, than a regular fighter, which will increase the ability to cover a full zone, which will then transfer over to the air superiority. Now, also air superiority, heavy fighters have just a little bit more. Now, the air attack itself is a lot higher on these, but the agility on the fighters, which is the majority of the time what makes the difference, is a lot higher. Same thing if we compare heavy fighter 2s along with fighter 2s. The agility for these are way higher, so you would need to max out agility for heavy fighters to be able to stack up to these guys, and if they upgrade the engines, it's a nightmare. But sometimes it's better to use the heavy fighters against them, and this is why. As an example, I went ahead and put 100 British, UK, whatever, fighter 1s in the Bellenooks with only half the range that the BF-109s have because they're heavy fighters. Now, as you can see, they're engaging, and we only have 20% air superiority because the enemies, the Germans, actually have more range than us. So if we look over here at Germany, as you can see, we obviously cover the zone, so that gives us 100% of the coverage, which you can actually see if we hover over here. No, it does not say. I forgot where it shows it. Here it is. Average mission efficiency is 100% because of the coverage, airbase, and supply. So since we have that maxed out, if you look, now that the planes are going to begin battling, and okay, here we go. Yeah, as you can see, they're losing a lot more fighters to our heavy fighters by a ridiculous level because we have much more range over them, and we have much more mission efficiency compared to them with only this right here. They only have a 60% mission efficiency. So we took down 13 enemy fighters before we lost a single one of our heavy fighters because we have more range than them, which increases our mission efficiency. So sometimes heavy fighters are better than regular fighters, other times fighters are better than heavy fighters, like if the range is the same. So maybe heavy fighters are a good idea for places like Russia, where Ukraine is pretty big, Central Russia, stuff along those lines, which help out a lot. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Please subscribe. If you did not enjoy the joke in the beginning about the kamikaze pilot, I'm sorry. Also, guys, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Stay awesome.